Welcome, everyone. It's really delightful to be here with you all at La Hora. My name is Cynthia Lawson Jaramillo. I'm the director of the Parsons Deed Lab at Parsons School of Design in New York City. We have been since 2007 studying the artisan sector and looking for modeling, amplifying, critiquing collaborations between artisans and designers, always looking for models that center the artisans, their futures, their children, their families, their livelihoods over the often commercial and sometimes exploitative interests of not only designers, but also entrepreneurs, founders, and other intermediaries. I'm joined here also by Valentina Palacios, research fellow in the Deed Lab. And we're delighted to share this space with you. These are hour-long monthly conversations. They're meant to be spaces for learning, for exchange, for conversation. And in advance of today's event, we received an email from Carmen Malvar. And when Carmen shared with us the work that she's been doing with the CADA Foundation within the artisan sector, we, of course, jumped at the opportunity to have her share her thoughts, her experiences, her ideas, her vision, and her critiques in today's session with you all. Some of you are here today and some of you are watching the recording, and we appreciate your time. So I will hand it over to Carmen, who will introduce herself. I will say that I already have learned that she is a force to reckon with. Her vision and her heart is really beautifully aligned with the ethical and social justice concerns of the Parsons Deed Lab vis-a-vis artisans and the roles that designers play in the artisan sector. And I'm delighted to hand it over to Carmen to share more about her work, her experiences with us. Carmen will speak for about a half hour, and then we'll have plenty of time for your questions or comments. We also welcome at any point in time, if you want to add questions or comments in the chat, feel free to participate in that way, as this event is somewhat informal. Carmen?
Well, thank you, Cynthia, for really giving me this space. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the lab festival, because I think it's important that the work we do on the field as a design practitioners, it really have an area in academic level to really share all this. This, I just want to be sure to say that this is a work, it's a collaborative work. It's not only me. I'm the face of a work that is being done with many people for many years, and we still are doing that. So I'm like a little bit like the ambassador of a really group of energy and people behind of the artisans and the designers, and that we really want to call ourselves facilitators. So for me, it's a pleasure to be able to have this platform to really share some of the work that we were doing and explain a little bit what CADA Foundation is. And I don't know if we can start with the screen. Everyone is seeing it, Cynthia? Well, CADA started like a research project almost 7 years ago. And it was part of the UK Southampton University, and they were really kind enough to give me a really grant, a fantastic grant that allows me to really go through to do my PhD. But at the end, that really deep research became just a compromise with the communities. The idea of identity on the age of globalization and the idea of introduction CADA Foundation as part of what really means for us designers to be part of globalization and considering what is happening with the communities and the loss of identity. So on the next slide, I just can talk about the basics of CADA Foundation as a community engagement through design and crafts. understanding the cultural heritage. And the way we do that, really, we go through an analysis of the territory. And I think, Cynthia, you can pass the next slide. The idea of really mapping what is really I think I can.
Sorry, it's giving me a hard time to move from one slide to the next. Just a second.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm in some weird edit mode. Let me just restart preview and we'll jump to the third slide. Do you see that, Carmen?
Yeah, I see
Okay.
that. So basically, we start working in Oaxaca. Culturally speaking, it's a very rich community in Mexico. It's a very complex project. And I think, Cynthia, I don't know if I should share, compartir pantalla, and I try to.
Would you prefer? Sure.
Well, I think I may. So
that you can move at your rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me.
How can I do that?
You should be able to share screen now.
Compartir pantalla. Can you see the screen of my presentation?
Yes. Do you want to try to put that in full screen?
Yeah, that would be great. Is that good?
Yes, we see the first slide that says identity in the age of globalization.
Okay, let me see if I can just move it. Oh, perfect. Can you, everyone sees well? Okay, great. So basically, CADA Foundation really start with a community engagement through design and crafts. We mapped the territory, and we did it because it was very important for us to understand. Some of the local collaborators have been living there for many years, but it still was very important to go through and navigate through the customs and really the cultural spectrum of the atmosphere that before even getting to any kind of information. So we work on Mexico between several states. We really map and document the process. This is very important for us because it was no case studies where we really have the documentation from the beginning to the end. So basically every single step we did mapping the territory, we documented. And when I say documented, it's between transcripts and video recordings, as well as photographing. And of course, Oaxaca has already a huge, tremendous amount of information, ethnographically speaking and design speaking, through the textiles, for example, right? They have a whole mapping of all the states, what kind of textiles they have. So we were working in a territory that already are very aware of the potential of the cultural heritage that they do have, which is not usual, unfortunately, in other many countries and regions, to have this awareness of the richness of the techniques. So we keep working and mapping communities, geographically speaking, looking for marginal communities to have poor access. Immediately, we really create a fantastic team. This is some of them. The right one is Eric. He is collaborator of the Textile Museum, Mesoamerican in Oaxaca. the middle one, Fatima, is an ex-student of mine from Barcelona, but she's one from Oaxaca. Madalena Forcela is textile artist, 30 years capacitating communities between Chiapas and Oaxaca. Omar is an architect based in Oaxaca as well. So again, mapping and getting information was crucial also for creating a case study to be able to share, which this will be coming in a book. We collaborate with local anthropologists that they really have firsthand on the information of the communities and the needs. And we use the artifacts as and that is, it was very important for us to use the artifacts as an articulatory element to create a dialogue between the artisans and the facilitators. Madalena, of course, is a high expert on textile, and that helps a lot to really start creating a dialogue with the same language, which I think is something that's very important. She's been 30 years working on the site. Ana Paula Fuentes is another textile expert, Mexican, which can recognize any kind of textile from any community on the mapping territory of Mexico, and is that also part of Guatemala. We work also mapping communities that work with different techniques. This is the copper in Michoacan, interviewing them and really working with them very closely to understand what are the difficulties on creating and also doing production. I'm coming from a strategy. My background is strategy, and I think for me it was very important also to kind of understand the difficulties of production and the backstage of production. We also talk to local people and intermediaries and what we call cultural liaisons with the community. Some of them, this is in Chiapas with the Soxil community. It was very difficult to access. So we try to approximate through cultural liaisons where persons will really have close trust with the communities. Trust is an important part of the process. So in all this universe, CADA start creating organigrams of logistics, commercialization, communication, facilitators, craft production consultants, which was very important for us because there was this part of the project that we really need to have this contemporary 21st century market and at the same time have the reality of the communities. Listening to elderlies, which is something very important for the communities, to have that in mind and really have the time to sit with them and listen to them, since oral tradition is something is very embedded on the presence. And really to understand case studies like this is Pellicer, this American sculpture that really create one of the only case studies in Mexico with copper, where really with the community really create a project, which is a book, The Artisans of the Future. The only few case studies that I can say they are documented through really collaboration with craftsmanship, where you really empower the community instead of really using them as a labor. So our first problem or our first debate was really considering all this knowledge and this memory of how the community really have this as a tacit knowledge, how we really were moving from the community tacit knowledge to the cultural artifacts and using the artifact as a social mediator. And that is something is very interesting because through the artifact, we create dialogue between the artisans and the designers. So we work with the team, we were really mixing different designers. Here is one of the multiple meetings with the cultural liaison for the Highland Mystics territory. Is Madalena Forcela, Omar, Ana Paula, and we were just coming from one of the workshops. We started doing drawings from the oral tradition. So we use the drawings and the artifacts, the toys, we just choose that, and creating this knowledge and these infographics where we really were very aware that community has their own resilience membrane. and how you really enter in and out without really damage that membrane, which is a very fine membrane. And that was very important to us. And again, we're working with people that has been more than 20 years working with communities, and all the debates were recorded, all the discussions that sometimes were very pleasant and sometimes were not very pleasant, and also with the women's and the idea of this decolonizing idea of the design, right? Also very important was the idea of ethos, the aesthetics and the ethics, how are inseparable in the communities, and how for them is some part of the regulation inherited in the community. So all those were values that we will really need to have very close to us in order to really do an approximation of the community. And all this was before even starting doing the workshops. We tried to start working, and we did through oral tradition. We thought it was the first best way to really tell stories of how this narrative of the memory, since historically these communities have no, the Spaniards unfortunately was very sure that they burn all the books and manuscripts they have. So what they've been surviving in a resilient way was through memory and the narratives, and those narratives became graphically expressions, and those graphic expressions we work through that. So that was the first approximation, which it took us a long time, and we start really being able to transform those narratives through and with the women's of the communities on 3D formats. And when I'm talking 3D, it's also in textiles, and we will see some samples later. So basically, for us, it was really very important how the material, the aesthetics, and these interactive qualities of the objects were very important, that contributes to understand the social and cultural context where we're really working. We work into communities. This is Tijaltepec. It's a very marginal community. The embroidery is absolutely amazing. Some of the women, of course, they only speak Mixtec. We have a cultural liaison, and we start really asking them to work with samples. And this is some of the samples of the patterns they work. They do not have, they don't use templates. It's a really intangible knowledge that they have that goes through generations. And some of the products that we came out after 5 years came out in the Textile Art Museum on Oaxaca. Those were really, this process is 7 years of work. It's not just going in diagonal to have an idea how much time it took us. CADA is also working with some debates, important debates that we don't really want to kind of call ourselves as a policemen, but is something that it comes to us as a very big problem, and is the debate of plagiarism or the cultural appropriation of identity. It's an open debate. It's still lots to conversations to do, and we're hoping that, with these kind of platforms, thanks to Deep Lab, we can start really open more and more this debate, which is really, this is one of the cases that I would like to share. In January 2015, a famous Oaxacan singer tweeted that the French label Isabel Marat has really copied a traditional blouse from one of the communities. The message obviously went really circulating through social media. I mean, we have to think now that the communities have Facebook and have Instagram. So, and technology is part of their reality. It's not like some of them, they are not, but thanks to social media, they are exposed, and these things now are really on the public eye. So this provoked really international press, national, and this is one of the many, many samples. But this was the first time in history that the Indigenous Institute came out with what is called a dictamen. It's a legal regulation from the identity of the blouses, because the Western side said, well, you know, they don't have copyright, right? That is what Isabel Marat's team said. And the response was, well, we don't need Western, they use copyright. The communities, they don't need copyright. There are these blouses and these blouses and this dress is our identity. This is who we are. This is what makes us who we are. The dictamen is a long page written by anthropologists, and it's the first time. The second one has been through CADA in another community. It's an open debate. It's a huge debate. It still needs a lot of attention. This is this is Mango, another textile company with another exactly the same problem, and it's an ongoing problem. And we consider that we need to really address us as a designers, and us as also social designers, but also as ethically speaking, we have to have a compromise to really approach the community and ask permission and ask collaboration. And this is, you know, their voices to be able to really create something together in the case they are considering is appropriate for them. Another current debate that we are actually right now preparing in collaboration with the Swimming Hole Foundation, which Nagos is also all listening to today, is in the Swimming Hole Foundation, is how we measure this impact when we go and work for years. And I'm gonna really share a couple of case studies that I really think that are I consider honored to be part of them. How we really measure the impact, how and who measure the impact. Do I measure the impact of Sebastiana, a woman that has been earning money and coming back home with more money, and how that changed the dynamic of the children in relation with the fathers? Because Sebastiana goes now to town to sell their clothing, and now for the first time, her husband stays with the children. Is that a commodity? What is commodity for us in the Western side, and what is commodity for the communities? Who is the one to measure? And that is another important debate that CADA Foundation wants to make it aware as an important work that we all need to do and we all really need to think. I'm going to share two projects that current CADA projects are looking for funding. Funding is always, of course, welcome because these projects need support, the support of being able to disseminate through Deep Lab, and thank you again for this opportunity, but also because we really need to keep working, and that is a compromise that we need to have when we start working with communities. This is not a question of going for a weekend or for a month and then come back and just take the picture and say, I'm just collaborating with communities. That is not the way to work. And we are totally against that. And this is what the trend, that everyone collaborates and put a beautiful image of a wonderful dressed woman. And then this is collaboration. And I think it takes a long time, takes trust and takes compromise. And this is our case studies that are years on the field. The people that I'm gonna talk about is people that are so busy, they don't even have time to really create presentations and PowerPoints. I speak through them, through CADA. This is Colectivo 1050. They are working with pottery, mainly clay. They've been working for more than 20 years. This is a community in Tonaltepec. We work with them doing workshops. Their pottery is a kind of Pollock, kind of tinted. It's a pre-Hispanic technique, untouched. to the point of extinction when Colectivo started working with the women. There were only few artisans left, and they start actually developing capacitation. CADA was funding some of the workshops, and they were really fantastic. Right now they keep working, of course, with this community and many others. Is one of the people and the team that I support, CADA support, and is looking really for the continuation. They, of course, always need funding for projects. This is Kisia and some of the women. This is the landscape they are encountering. They're also working with alternative ways of really burn the clay, because as you see, this is deforestation already. There is, there is no trees to cut for doing burning the clay, right? So there is a whole ecosystem that needs to be addressed. They're talking about using recycling oil from the restaurants in the city to be able to do some ecological ovens so they can actually burn in a different way. It's really nice to see young generations coming to the workshops. It's really amazing to really share this. The other project that I want to share, and this is for me one of the unique textile projects that have been since probably almost 30 years ago. It was funding by Veronique and a group of French designers almost 30 years ago. El Camino de los Altos in Chiapas. They have wonderful textiles. This is the Chamula community. Is up on I will show a map. It's up in San Cristobal de las Casas. It's a community, I will say, a little bit out of the Western invasion. It's in Acantán. Here is San Cristobal. Is the center of Chiapas. Tuxtla is probably where really is the most authentic city. You have to drive to San Cristobal, beautiful place. These women's, this is Veronique in the center. Now it's around 130 weavers. They start with a group of 5 or 6. They all now are capacitated. They capacitate one to another in a transversal, horizontal way. They've been really working on improving the technique. They work this wonderful wood, tinted wood wool, and they do a process of wool that actually is really fascinating. And the approximation of the textiles, they work with natural dyeing. The process is very elaborated. This is the quality, which is fantastic. They used to have shops, they have to close them. It's a really high level of design these women have. And it has been curated in a very, very delicate way. The school that El Camino de los Altos is looking to open is a school for textile arts for the women, with the women, through the women of the community. So it's not a project for Western people to come to learn. It's for the communities to be able to capacitate themselves, to be able to explore themselves, to be able to decide how they transform themselves through the textile, the art of textile. There is, of course, something very important, and it's crucial to say that the school provides tools. The tools are provided is to be able to empower the women. to be able to make them independent and to be able to transform themselves, their designs. The tools are not given to them to create labor or cheap labor, which is what is happening in many of the occasions, is when Western designers visit these communities, they eventually introduce patterns, introduce ideas, introduce tools in order to come out with an artifact for the designer's sake. That the only thing it does is interrupt the whole delicate membrane that we talked before. And those tools became oppressive and create a labor to the communities. El Camino de los Altos and CADA Foundation believes that tools are necessary for the communities, for them to use them and to empower them to become them independent and to be able to really transform their designs and their ideas. And they don't need us. They have it all. They need exchange. We need exchange. We need their knowledge. They need our tools. We exchange knowledge. And this is what we believe in CADA. El Camino for us is one of the best samples. I will say that the best we know as a case study that we have the honor to really be able to talk about it. I have the permission to the project to be able to talk about it and to be able to ask for funding for this school. This school, the idea is that it has mobility. It's not only in one community, it's going to be moving around communities. The process is very interesting because I was talking to Veronique and was telling me how important was for her certain tools to be incorporated and the process that they've been working with since 20 years ago. But there was an interesting approach, like saying that, you know, we don't need the theory of Joseph Albers about color on the school. Why we don't need the theory of Joseph Albers about color in our school? Because Joseph Albers has a theory, it's a Western theory. These women have their own inherent knowledge of color, which is unbelievable. And they don't need anything more than give them the opportunity to be able to have platforms and to be able to have capacitation and tools to keep transforming and improving the quality of the textiles. The process is in El Camino is a whole process from the animal to the way they really clean it and the way they really tint it. It's a natural dye, and for that natural dye is Madalena comes often to give workshops. So they really work colors in a fantastic way with the nature and the plants that they have around. So this is a very concentrate half an hour opportunity. This is we could be speaking only about the process for, you know, a whole month, and another month for how we approach it, and another month for how we talk to the communities, and another month of how we really develop the first prototypes. It's a 7 years work, but for these people it's 20 years work. For pottery are 20 years work. I just trying to repeat again that CADA's mission is to really make it aware that you need to be there. You need to stay with the people. You need to compromise with the communities. You need to really understand and respect in order to create something together. Otherwise, it keeps saying colonizing design, and it keeps really being an excuse for many of, unfortunately, in our field of design, talking about collaboration, and it's not true, and talking about appreciation when it's really appropriation. And this is something that we really, and thanks for platforms like Deep Lab, we can really talk about this. And I think it's very important. We think it's very important, and this is actually very clear, and it's something that it needs to be talked loud. We really hope this is one of the meetings. You will see always the children around. the women are with the children, and many times it's a space where when the children can access to education, others they can. But it's also fantastic to see how the new generations are able to have access to these tools that we're talking about. And this is real empowerment. And this is really what makes change. So I think I already went through the half an hour. And I'm just closing this beautiful picture of one of the women with a Pantone color, choosing her own decision, what is making work. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this through CADA. And this is our email for anyone that really wants to write us or contact us, and also, of course, through Cynthia. And I'm happy to answer any questions or anything that anyone wants to comment or add. Of course, Cynthia, I pass you the voice now. If you
Wonderful, Carmen. Thank you so much. Really, what an amazing presentation. There was so much to respond to there. I look forward to seeing if there are any questions, comments. I know we have one question in the chat from Valentina, who was curious to, and for people who arrived late, Valentina is research fellow in the Parsons Deed Lab. We work closely together. And Valentina's question was, what strategies have you used to incorporate the younger generations in the workshops, or which strategies have you seen maybe seem to be working well?
Well, I think there's a family decision for us in Tijалтepec. The moment that the women start understanding the process, they always bring the children because they don't have a place to leave them. That is first thing. But the other thing too is that men play a big role on it. So as the family, they make decisions, and once the men and the household trust us, is when the young generation start coming in. So I will say my answer will be a question of trust and time, that the mothers trust enough to be able to bring the youngers to the process. And that will be probably the best way to answer that. And again, there is not really a methodology behind. On CADA, we talk about approximation. It is, in a way, that approximation itself is the way we try to do it, which is little by little. In soft seal, it's called cum cum, little by little, poco a poco, and that means a lot of time and trust through maybe food, sharing spaces, sharing household, and food is very important too. At the beginning, we bring food, then they start offering us food, and then we celebrate together. So it's a process, and food is part of that too. So yeah, that is a little bit the answer. I don't know, Valentina, if that helps you.
Yeah, that was super, a great answer. And also, I think it proves the way you are sharing with the community, not only sharing knowledge, but also sharing experiences and building this relationship horizontal, and there is not scale. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we have Sonia and then Daniel, and I ask if you could maybe do a quick introduction of yourself or what brought you to today's session. Sonia?
I'm an incoming from India. I'm joining for strategic design and management for fall this year. And I'm very closely related with the textile industry in India. My family enterprise runs an export from Jaipur to the US majorly. And we also have a profit that runs with the organization. But my question is, how do you recommend designers? I'm an architect and a furniture designer with my background. So, and I work very closely with but I don't know how to stick their design values into the products that we're making. Let's say we work with the design ideas that come from our clients, and not more than often, we also present what are own with the things. How do you help them make things more sellable? Because everybody needs commerce in the end.
Well, I'm an architect as a trained too, Sonia, by the way. And then I moved to a strategy. I think we could have another month of workshop about this. I'm gonna try to answer you like overall. It means, I think it's a whole study of the backstage production from the beginning of the resources, local resources, the iconography. There is a whole study first that I would recommend to do of what you have locally, what has been produced locally, what is the iconography, to be able to respect and talk to the artisans. This is the first important thing you have to do. Once you create this ecosystem, then there is an approach that you have to study through costs, right? And then you get into another phase, which is really the production phase and the prototyping, how much time it takes, lead time, import and exports. You have to keep adding numbers. So that is a whole mini workshop that I'm sure Deep Lab and Cynthia team, and maybe me too, in near future, we start working, because I think it's many of our requests is how we really, I have people from Amazonia that contact me and trying to really exactly the same question. And it's a whole study, and also to working strategy speaking. You have to, for one side, in the design part, do an ethnographic study. On the other side, you have to do a strategy study of costs and also lead time. You cannot produce, 1,000 items. We are no machines, so time is also a cost. So you cannot promise what you cannot deliver, but there is a compromise with the community production as well. So all that is a negotiation, but has to be done with the artisans. You cannot do it on your side. You have to sit with them and agree and do testing, right? So it's failed testing, and they have to be part of it, counting the times. And then, so yeah, I wish we have more time to go over it, but definitely your intentions, just to have the intentions are great. Talk to the artisans is the first thing I will say you, really. And explore what they like to do and what they would like to transform. And from that, you start a conversation, which you include them instead of just creating labor, and you will have much greater results.
I want to add, we have in our now 15 years of researching the sector, have not found a for-profit venture at scale that centers the livelihoods, futures, and creativity of artisans. So at some point, you also need to accept that if what is driving your model is the business plan and revenue and scaling, you are necessarily reducing the artisan to be inexpensive labor. And that's something you need to grapple with. And I can only imagine the challenges of this being a family business. But I would be happy to continue this conversation further. Thank you so much, Sonia, for being here. Daniel, and then Magdalena.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carmen. Well, I have to say that, as you can see, her research is enough for 200 doctoral theses. And she literally went to the mountains, symbolically and literally. She went to the mountains. So, I mean, it's not a joke. I mean, it's not something that I do on the square of my neighborhood. And I would like to highlight the ethics, and this was very clear now when she was explaining that the project, which she approaches to the issue, to the community, with the utmost respect for the community, and recovering the traces of projects such as Santa Clara del Cobre. So all these indigenous practices and theories. So it's not only practice. I mean, here there is a lot of reading. In fact, Carmen is a practitioner, and well, she knows the fight she had with books and these things. But I think it was very useful, of course, because from this she started to design in this dialogue between theory and practice, to design and implement strategies through which the community could produce and distribute by themselves and as they wish in a global context, right? So in this sense, the question, the comment that maybe here that the role of you as a designer was more an activator, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were giving meaning and direction to a complex and diverse network of actors and interests, and your role was this one, giving direction.
That was very important, to avoid imposition. So as a reflective practitioner, I was more like analyzing, and that was my role really. So, and that was a debate that was very important. Actually, hopefully there is a book coming out through Routledge Publishers, Critical Craft, and we talk about all this, how our position as really the reflective practitioner, where you facilitate, but you don't put yourself in the center at all. And that was something that was very difficult doing research, to get out of the middle, but at the same time being in the middle without no imposing. And that is something that really was probably the most difficult thing I ever did in my life. And I'm not sure if I will do it again, but I'm glad that I can share. I'm glad that I can share this to other students. I mean, I'm an educator, in my soul, I believe in education. And I think that we need to change the dynamics of young students, that they really want to make a change. And I think hopefully this case study with CADA Foundation may be a good sample for others. Not just a solution, but at least a reflection on the problematics.
Process, and also about the process. And definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. And Magdalena?
Okay.
Don't forget
Hi,
to
everyone.
introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. Well, I'm Magdalena Catan. I'm from Chile. I've been working in Universidad de Chile for a while. I'm very closely with artisans from the natural fibers, like wicker and other type of fibers. And I've been participating in similar projects as Carmen was mentioning. And also I was very lucky to meet the people from from the pottery in Oaxaca, Kitzia and Diego. Yeah, sorry, I haven't been speaking in English for a while, so I'm a bit rusty on that.
It's okay.
And then, so I just wanted to ask you, because from my research, I've been finding that artisans were really willing to transmit their knowledge to others, and they were enjoying a lot trespassing that knowledge. And in a way, from our university, we wanted to find a way that we could kind of put that knowledge and start valuing that knowledge in a similar, in a balance as the traditional design knowledge, that more Eurocentric and roots. So I want to ask you about that, like if there is also a perspective about how can we actually validate artisanal knowledge as the knowledge that we do as traditional designers, that if it's a discussion about that, like how to start valuing that those practices in a similar way that we value formal education in academic places.
Yeah,
so that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me personally, as an educator, I think the case study of El Camino de los Altos trying to open this school for textile art for the women capacitating each other is probably a milestone. There is some of the art and craft centers in Chiapas and Oaxaca that originally were intended to do so. But there is and this is a political issue too, which some of the countries don't get very interested, is that when you give the power to the people to really be powerful through what they know, which is working with their hands, this is unstoppable. So for many countries, and this is historically being very critical, it was very much more convenient to be paternalistic and give them money to keep them happy and quiet, So they just get patronized. And this is a role model. It still is happening, and it's still, unfortunately, many designers are doing the same. And so, yeah, I would say it's an open debate, of course. I think that for CADA, the initiative of El Camino de los Altos opening this art textile school, we should watch this as a case study, as a model to implement, where the young women capacitate themselves in between themselves in a transversal way. Yeah. So I think, and obviously there is some Western, and this is no, a closed walls. There is Western people, and it's a graphic designer coming to be invited, but it's very curated, and and are the own women who decide. So I will say that it should be created by them, with them, forgetting a little bit the European Western academic school, and then see in a certain point how this grows towards each other, right? Instead of trying to bring an artisan in the middle of a class as a exotic thing to, to share with us. At least this is personally how I see. I don't know, Cynthia, what you think about it.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, I agree with all of that. And thank you for joining us, Magdalena. Our research, some of our recent research in the lab and work with Valentina and other collaborators, we've been really encouraging a different kind of framing that externalize that others artisans as non-designers. So even when we talk about models between designers and artisans, we're essentially saying artisans are not designers. And we are preoccupied and we have a sense of responsibility being a research lab within a large and globally known design school to also question and critique, why are we gatekeeping the label designer? We seem to associate designer as somebody who has a certain level of privilege, a certain level of education, often comes from an urban center, often does not come from the communities within which they or we then want to work. So I also encourage, I think, especially educational institutions that are adjacent to these communities have a beautiful, really powerful opportunity to demonstrate how you can, through the ways in which universities celebrate knowledge, by paying the artisans as professors, by hiring them to do master classes, by perhaps considering that it is through exchanges of knowledge that we can then generate funds. And it's not just through the making of things that they have to demonstrate that they're worthy of being celebrated, but in fact, it's what they know. One of my dream projects that I would love to fundraise for, and it would be awesome to have a consortium of universities, would be to have an organization such as UNESCO or maybe another fund an archive of ancestral, what I'm calling ancestral design techniques, and that we would document these techniques, and that as our students learned and incorporated these techniques into their own work, that there would be a royalty model that goes back to the community, so that it would be a shared library. It could be a global library of resources that could perhaps create a revenue stream for these communities, and perhaps give back for projects such as those that Carmen was sharing. So yeah, a lot to think about there, and yeah, never enough time for all the money we need to raise for these projects.
Sounds like an amazing project, and we are looking forward to do something similar back in our universities. It's difficult because it's all these formalities that kind of restrains the possibility that artisans could be validated as any other academic or teacher, and we're trying to change that, even contesting the term artesano within that space, because it has also a charge that makes this differentiation between designer and putting these things as opposites, which is not true. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
I gave a talk at the Temuco Catholic University in Chile, and because they are themselves on Mapuche land, they're quite preoccupied with these questions and challenges, which I think are really important. Would love to keep in touch. Maybe we could work on something together. And yeah, Valentina interviewed somebody recently for some of our research in Colombia who does not call herself an artisan and calls herself an artist. And that, you know, that's a whole, like all these labels in terms of definitions, the centering of creativity is ultimately what connects all of them.
Mm.
Any additional questions or comments? I had maybe to end, I have a question for you, Carmen. You really emphasize trust, and trust comes with time and with slowness and with a non-externalization of goals. And most often what we see in the sector are either donors, foundations or philanthropists who already have a goal that they're imposing on a particular project. They're giving money because they imagine what the output should be. Or we see designers or founders with clients who are often corporate, well-known brands who have then the pressures of the cycles imposed by fast fashion and other forms of consumption. We as a lab have been leaning towards, the answer is just, it's not possible. It's not possible to both center the artisan and have these commercial goals because the temporal frameworks are in such clashing. And wondering if you have perspectives around that the time that's needed. You mentioned that somebody goes in for a week and then they say that they did a co-design or a collaborative design. Do you think there's a minimum amount of time that you've experienced that somebody needs to be able to really create this kind of meaningful exchanges as the ones that you've presented today?
I think more than thinking on someone coming and have a minimum experience, I will say that the basics to create some level of real collaboration, and it really needs to be a collaboration. It has to have the right people, be connected with local people, and that local people has to be been there for a long time to be able to create that change. If you go there to pretend that the community is gonna work with you and give you their thoughts, if you don't have someone in the middle as what we call cultural liaison, I think it's impossible. So my answer will be yes, absolutely you can do collaborations, but that collaborations, it really means to be a collaborative approach, meaning that the industry needs to find the right people, that these people is ethically attached to the community and are they making the liaison with the community, and then the things start happening. And I think that is this element in the middle, which is the cultural liaison, like in our sense was in Tijaltepec, Lita was a university graduate, speak Mixtec, and she lives in the community. She was perfect. Otherwise, it would be impossible to do that project. So she transmits in a very poetic way, which was unbelievable how she transmits poetically the thoughts and the fears of the women, because she was able to translate in a Western thought, and many times the way they think is so attached to nature that we are like so lost on that in the Western side. So it was really important. I think that is what I will say, then things can happen, you know, maybe in a short period of time with the right team, with the right talks and the right strategy. Yeah. I don't know if that is a
Yes, that's
hope.
great. We're gonna do a formal ending here. I appreciate everyone so much for joining us at La Hora. We look forward to keeping in touch. If you have thoughts, work in progress, or your own projects that you would like to present at a future event, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us on Instagram at Deed Lab. Thank you for coming, and happy to stay and do some informal chatting